It was supposed to be a normal Thursday. I was sitting on the couch, half watching TV while scrolling through job listings, trying to figure out how to scrape together the money for the rent that was due in a few days. I've been working part-time shifts at a coffee shop while freelancing as a writer on the side, but with bills piling up, I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. It had been like this for a while. Me, struggling to keep up with my sister, Ella, who worked at a law firm, making way more than I could dream of. She was the one who had offered to let me stay with her when I lost my last apartment. We'd split the rent 30/70ths, which was fine by me. I didn't mind the imbalance. She had the steady job, the solid income. But something was different that day. I could feel in the air, the way Ella walked in, the way her shoes clacked against the hardwood floor, the way she didn't even look at me when she tossed her purse onto the kitchen counter. She didn't even say hi or ask how my day was. I felt the tension in her silence. It was as if something was building up, something that I hadn't seen coming, even though I should have. I've been ignoring all the little signs, and I realize that now. Ella, I called out, finally looking up from my phone. She didn't respond immediately, so I got up, walking toward her. I had been living with her for a year now, and we'd always been close, always been there for each other. But her behavior was strange, like she was avoiding something, avoiding me. I found her standing by the fridge, staring at the list of bills we still needed to pay. The light in the kitchen flickered, adding to the oddness of the moment. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to read her face, but there was something cold in her eyes that unsettled me. She turned slowly, her gaze not meeting mine as she shrugged. "Yeah, fine." Her voice was off, distant. "We need to talk." Talk. The word alone sent a knot twisting in my stomach. Whenever Ella said we needed to talk, it was never a good thing. It always meant something had gone wrong, and I was about to find out that it was about to hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know what it was, but something in her tone told me that whatever it was going to change everything. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. "What's going on?" She was silent for a moment. I could hear the fridge humming and the distant sound of a car passing by outside, but it felt like everything else had stopped. When she finally spoke, her words cut through the stillness like a blade. "I'm kicking you out." I blinked, thinking I'd misheard her. "What?" I said. "I'm kicking you out," she repeated, her voice level, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. She looked at me then, finally meeting my gaze with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "I can't keep doing this, Sarah. I can't keep carrying the weight of your life on my back. I'm not your babysitter." My heart dropped. "What the hell are you talking about? We agreed on this, on everything. I'm not asking you to carry my weight. I'm doing the best I can." She scoffed, shaking her head as though I was missing the point completely. "The best you can? The best you can is freeloading off me, missing rent payments, leaving your crap all over the house, and expecting me to just cover for you. Every single time." I could feel my pulse in my ears now, the blood rushing to my head. "I've been trying, okay? I told you I'd get the rent this month, and I'm working on it. I'm not just sitting here doing nothing." She cut me off. "It's always an excuse with you, Sarah. Always. And I'm tired of it. I've been covering for you for months. I'm not your mom. You need to figure out on your own now. I'm done." I couldn't breathe. The words she was saying were so cold, so final, that they didn't feel like they were coming from her. It was like she was someone else, someone I didn't know. "You're really going to do this? After everything we've been through? You're just going to throw me out?" My voice was shaky now, full of disbelief. She stared at me, her eyes narrowing, and there was a flicker of something, guilt, maybe, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. "I'm sorry, but yes, you have 2 weeks. I'm not going to let you stay here anymore." 2 weeks. It felt like a lifetime. I stood there, frozen, not sure if I should scream, cry, or just walk out right then and there. But I couldn't do any of those things. I couldn't move, couldn't make sense of what was happening. This was my sister, the person who had always been there for me. But now, she was acting like I was a stranger, like I was someone she couldn't stand to be around. The walls of the apartment suddenly felt too small, the air too thick, and all I wanted to do was run. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "You don't mean this, Ella. You can't. You know I've been doing my best." But she was already walking away, her back to me, as though this conversation was already over. "I'm not changing my mind, Sarah. You need to go." And just like that, she shut the door on me. I stood there in the silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Kicked out. No warning, no chance to make it right. I had no place to go, no plan, no safety net. Just the cold realization that my sister, my family, had just cut me loose. The next few days were a blur. I kept going through the motions, doing my best to keep it together, but everything felt different. Every corner of the apartment seemed to mock me, to remind me of how quickly everything had fallen apart. The place where we had spent late nights talking, laughing, even fighting suddenly felt empty. Every room echoed with the silence left in her wake. I tried to act normal, but normal was long gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had broken between us, and that no matter how hard I tried, it was never going to be fixed. Ella didn't want to talk about it. I could tell by the way she avoided eye contact, the way she kept herself busy, locked in her room when she wasn't at work. At first, I thought maybe there was some misunderstanding, that if I could just explain myself, maybe things would change. I told myself that if I could just get her to listen, we could work through it. But as each hour passed, as each day went by, the more I realized that wasn't going to happen. I couldn't leave the apartment. I didn't have the money to go anywhere else, not with rent due soon. I could have called a friend, I guess, but it felt like I'd been making excuses for too long. Every time I thought about asking anyone else for help, I felt like a failure. Ella had been my safety net, my rock, and now I was falling, and I didn't know where I would land. One morning, I woke up to a text message from her. It was brief, cold. Asked her to find somewhere else to go. "I'll give you the 2 weeks, but don't think I'm changing my mind." Asterisk, the word stung like salt in a wound. I knew it was coming, but seeing it in black and white made it final. I put the phone down, not wanting to look at it anymore, and stared out the window, wishing for a different reality. It was almost like I had been living in a dream, one that I couldn't wake up from. I tried reaching out to her again that afternoon, hoping maybe if I showed some emotion, something would click. I knocked on her door, but there was no answer. I stood there for a few minutes, listening for any sounds, but everything was dead quiet. I didn't know where she was, and I didn't want to sit around and wait. So I went into the kitchen, pulling out a few ingredients to try to make something that would at least make me feel a little bit better. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to do something. Cooking was always my escape when everything else felt too much. I was in the middle of chopping vegetables when I heard the door open. I turned around to see her standing in the hallway, her arms crossed, staring at me with that cold expression again. "I told you we're done," she said, her voice sharp like a warning. "I just want to talk, Ella. Please." I didn't know how to make her understand that this wasn't how I wanted things to end, that I wasn't just the person she thought I was, that I had tried. She didn't move. "We've talked enough. You've had plenty of chances to change things, but you haven't. I can't keep doing this. I'm tired of watching you fall apart. Why are you doing this?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding back until now. I thought I could handle it, but her refusal to listen, to even consider that there was more to the story, it broke me. We've been through so much together. I've never asked you for anything, Ella. I didn't want to burden you. But this? You're just throwing me out like it doesn't matter. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, but it was gone before I could be sure. I'm not throwing you out like you don't matter. But you're not trying. You think I can just keep holding everything up while you keep making excuses. I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up a hand, silencing me. No, I'm done listening. I've been the one doing all the work. I've been carrying this, and I'm sick of it. It's not my job to fix you. You need to figure it out on your own. I couldn't speak. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her everything I've been trying to hold in, but I couldn't find the words. Every attempt to explain myself, to get through to her, felt like it fell on deaf ears. I never asked you to fix me. I never asked for any of this. I'm trying. Trying isn't enough anymore. She turned her back to me, walking toward the door of her room. I can't keep pretending like everything's okay. It's over, Sarah. This is the end. And just like that, she was gone again, leaving me standing there in the kitchen, holding a knife that I hadn't even realized I was still gripping. I dropped it onto the counter, the clatter echoing through the empty apartment. The weight of her words settled over me, cold and final, like a blanket I couldn't shake off. I tried to stay calm, to keep breathing, but the anger and frustration were bubbling up now, threatening to spill over. How could she do this? How could she just shut me out like this, without even trying to understand? It wasn't fair. She had been my family, my support, the person I thought I could always rely on. And now, she was turning her back on me, without a second thought. I was done being passive, done sitting around waiting for something to change. This wasn't just about the rent. It was about everything that had been building up between us, everything that had been left unsaid for far too long. I couldn't fix it, but I had to try. I wasn't going to let her push me out without a fight. The next few days felt like I was living in a haze, the heaviness of everything pressing down on me. Ella had made it clear that she didn't want to talk to me, so I had no choice but to retreat into my own world. I spent most of my time in my room, only leaving when I needed to get food or use the bathroom. I didn't want to argue with her anymore. I didn't even know what there was left to say. It felt like the damage had been done, and no matter how much I begged or explained, it wasn't going to change anything. The 2-week deadline she'd given me loomed over me, a constant reminder that I had no real place here anymore. That afternoon, I got a message from my friend, Natalie. I hadn't heard from her in a while, not since we'd both gotten so busy with work and life, but seeing her name pop up on my phone made me pause for a moment. She was the type of person who always knew how to make me laugh, how to remind me that life wasn't all bad. She was someone I knew I could rely on, but the last time I'd spoken to her, things had been a bit strained between us, mainly because of a stupid argument we'd had about some dumb thing I'd said. It had never really been resolved, but now, as I stared at her message, I knew I had no one else to turn to. *K, how are you? I know we haven't talked in a while, but I've been thinking about you. Do you need anything? I didn't waste time. I typed back quickly, knowing that if I didn't, I'd lose my nerve. Actually, yeah, I need your help. Can we talk? She replied almost instantly. Of course. What's going on? I wasn't ready to pour all my feelings out to her just yet. I wasn't even sure I could explain what was happening with Ella, but I knew I needed to try. It's a long story, but I'm kind of stuck. Can I come over? My door is always open. Come anytime. I didn't hesitate after that. I grabbed my bag, shoved a few things in it, and left the apartment without looking back. I couldn't be there anymore, not with Ella acting like I didn't exist. I needed some space, and maybe Natalie would be able to help me figure out what to do next. When I arrived at her apartment, she was waiting for me at the door, a welcoming smile on her face, as if everything was normal again. I hugged her tightly, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. She led me inside, and we sat on her couch, the silence between us settling in before she finally spoke. So, tell me what's going on. You can't just message me out of the blue like that without giving me some context, she said, her voice warm, but with an edge of concern. I exhaled slowly, collecting my thoughts. It's Ella. She kicked me out. Natalie's eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought I saw something close to anger flash across her face. What? She kicked you out? What the hell happened? I don't know, I said, running a hand through my hair. We've been living together for over a year. Everything was fine, at least that's what I thought. But then one night, she just turned on me. She said I was freeloading and that I wasn't trying hard enough to help around the apartment. She said she was done, that I needed to leave. Jesus, that's messed up, she said, her voice quiet but fierce. I can't believe she would do that to you. You've been nothing but supportive to her. I thought I'd been, I muttered. But maybe I've been too caught up in my own shit to notice that I've been falling short. I paused, the realization of my own faults hitting me harder than I wanted to admit. But it's not just about the rent. It's everything, Nat. It's like, I don't know, there's this tension between us, and I don't know how to fix it. I've tried talking to her, but she just shuts me down. She doesn't want to hear it. It's like I've become a problem to her. Natalie's expression softened, and she leaned in a little closer. You're not the problem, Sarah. She's the one being unreasonable. You've always had her back. Hell, you've done more for her than anyone else would have. I shook my head. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't been enough. She's been carrying everything, and I've been trying to do my part, but it's just not enough. Stop blaming yourself, Natalie said, her voice firm. Look, I'm not saying you haven't made mistakes. We all have our issues. But what she's doing isn't fair to you. She's making you carry the weight of things that aren't yours to carry. I looked down at my hands, the weight of her words settling into me. I don't know what to do, Nat. I'm out of options. I can't just keep staying in the apartment, pretending everything is fine, and I don't have the money to go anywhere else. I feel like I'm stuck. Natalie was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her tone was different, more thoughtful. I know you're stuck right now, but you're not alone. You have people who care about you. You don't need to figure it all out by yourself. She paused, and if you need a place to stay for a while, you can crash here. I've got room, and I'm not going to let you figure this out on your own. You don't have to go back there if it's making you feel like this. The offer hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of her words. I didn't know how to react at first. I hadn't expected her to offer. I hadn't expected anyone to offer. I had thought I was on my own, just waiting for the storm to pass. But now, as I looked at her, I realized that maybe I didn't have to go through this alone. Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Of course I'm sure, she said, her eyes serious but filled with a warmth that made me feel like I could breathe again. You don't have to ask. Just stay as long as you need. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. For the first time in days, I felt like I had some space to think. It wasn't a solution, but it was a relief. I wasn't entirely alone in this anymore. I had somewhere to go, someone to lean on. As I sat there with Natalie, feeling the weight of everything begin to loosen, I realized that maybe this was just the beginning of figuring things out. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't trapped anymore. And maybe that was enough for now. I stayed with Natalie for a few days, not because I had no other choice, but because it felt like I had to. Ella's words had sunk deep into me, and I couldn't just go back to that apartment, not when everything had turned upside down. But the longer I stayed with Natalie, the more I realized I wasn't just running away from the fight. I was avoiding the inevitable. Ella had given me 2 weeks, and now I had less than 1 left. I couldn't live out of a suitcase forever. I had to face her again, whether I was ready or not. The anger, the hurt, the confusion, it wasn't going to go away until we talked about it. But every time I thought about going back, I froze. The distance between us felt like a chasm I didn't know how to cross. That night, I got a message from Ella. It wasn't a long message, but the simplicity of it made my stomach drop. We need to talk. I stared at the words for a long time, trying to figure out what she meant. Was she finally ready to explain herself? Or was she going to make it worse? I thought about what Natalie had said about not letting her make me feel like I was the problem. And for the first time, I wondered if I had been so focused on what I had lost that I hadn't considered what Ella might have been feeling. Maybe there was more to her anger than I understood. I texted back quickly, trying not to second-guess myself. When and where? She replied almost immediately. Tomorrow at the apartment. The message was blunt, but it was a start. At least I knew she wasn't just shutting me out. I wasn't sure what would happen when we met, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. I couldn't run forever. The next day, I made my way back to the apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to walk back into that place where everything had fallen apart, but I knew I had no other choice. I couldn't live in this limbo. I had to face her. I had to face the person who had been my closest friend, my family, and figure out what went wrong. When I arrived, the door was already unlocked. I stepped inside, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. The apartment was still the same, except it wasn't. It felt different now. Empty, quiet, like a place that was no longer mine. Ella was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. She didn't say anything as I entered, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The silence between us was thick, like we were both waiting for the other to make the first move. I couldn't stand it anymore. Why are you doing this? I asked, the words rushing out before I could stop them. Why did you kick me out? What happened to us, Ella? She didn't answer right away, and when she did, Her voice was low, tight with emotion. I don't know, Sarah. I don't know what happened to us. I don't even know what happened to me. I couldn't keep doing it anymore. Doing what? What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing. What did I do wrong? Ella exhaled sharply, her eyes finally meeting mine. You didn't do anything wrong. Not exactly. It's just everything. You've been struggling and I've been trying to help, but it's like nothing changes. You're always waiting for the next paycheck, always waiting for something to fix things, and I can't keep waiting, Sarah. I can't keep trying to fix it for you. I felt the sting of her words. You think I'm just waiting? You think I'm not trying? I've been working my ass off. But it's not enough, is it? No, it's not that simple. It's not about the money or the rent. It's about everything else. About how I've had to take on so much, and how you haven't been able to carry your weight. I can't keep carrying everything. I can't keep doing it all for both of us. She shook her head, her voice cracking. I'm not a superhero. I'm just a person too. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't want to believe it, didn't want to admit that maybe she was right, but a part of me knew it was true. I had been so focused on my own struggles that I hadn't stopped to see how much pressure Ella had been under. I hadn't seen how much she had been holding on to, how much she had been carrying without asking for help. I hadn't noticed how everything I had been doing, or not doing, was adding to her stress, her frustration. I didn't realize, I whispered, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I never realized how much you were carrying. I thought I was doing enough, but I wasn't. Ella's expression softened, just a little, and she looked away, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Sadness, maybe, or regret. I should have told you sooner. I should have said something before it got this bad, but I didn't. I just kept hoping it would get better. She paused, as if weighing something in her mind. But now I don't know if it can. I don't know if we can go back to how things were. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, of guilt, regret, confusion. She was right, though. I had been so wrapped up in my own problems that I hadn't noticed how my actions, my inactions, had affected her. But I also didn't know if I could fix it. I didn't know how to make things right when the damage felt so deep, so final. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling hollow but true. I never wanted to put this on you. I never wanted to make you feel like you were alone in this. Ella sighed, her shoulders slumping. I know you didn't. But I can't keep going like this. I can't keep carrying both of us. For a long moment, we just stood there in the silence, neither of us sure what to say next. It wasn't that we didn't want to fix things. It was just that the path forward wasn't clear anymore. The bridge between us had been burned, and I didn't know if it was even possible to rebuild it. I don't know what to do, I whispered, the weight of everything pulling at me. Ella took a deep breath and looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. Maybe it's not about fixing everything, she said quietly. Maybe it's about figuring out how to move forward, not as roommates, but as people, as sisters, if that's even possible anymore. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that there was still a chance for us, but it felt like everything I had known was slipping through my fingers. All I knew was that it wasn't over. Not yet. There had to be a way forward. But whether or not we could find it was a question that neither of us had the answer to. The next few days were spent in a strange, quiet limbo. After that conversation with Ella, I wasn't sure where we stood. There was no shouting, no confrontation, just a sort of understanding, a painful realization that maybe we weren't who we used to be. But that didn't mean everything had been resolved. We still hadn't figured out how to fix what had been broken. Ella stayed in her room most of the time, coming out only to get something to eat or grab her things for work. I didn't push her, but I couldn't help but feel like I was walking on eggshells, unsure of what was allowed, what was acceptable. For the first time, we were two strangers sharing a space. Natalie checked in on me, and I kept telling her that I was fine, but I wasn't sure I was. I was starting to understand Ella's side more, but I was still lost in my own feelings. I still felt rejected, abandoned in a way that I didn't know how to process. It wasn't just about the apartment or the rent anymore. It was about the years of closeness that seemed to have disappeared in the blink of an eye. Was it really just that simple? Could we really fix this? I spent a lot of time thinking about what Ella had said, about how she couldn't keep carrying everything, how she couldn't keep waiting for me to get it together. I tried to put myself in her shoes, try to understand what it must have been like for her, shouldering so much on her own. But the more I tried, the more the guilt started to choke me. Maybe I hadn't tried hard enough. Maybe I had been selfish, expecting her to always be there, expecting her to always save me when I couldn't save myself. I wasn't innocent in all of this, and deep down, I knew it. The problem was, I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if we could go back to what we had, or if that was even possible. Then, one night, when I was sitting in my room, trying to make sense of everything, there was a knock on my door. At first, I didn't answer. I was too tired, too emotionally drained to deal with anything else. But the knock came again, softer this time, as if the person on the other side was waiting for permission. I sighed and got up, opening the door to find Ella standing there, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "I need to talk to you," she said, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was something real in her voice. No coldness, no distance, just two people who needed to figure something out. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. She sat down at the edge of my bed, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. It was like we were both waiting for the other to say something first, to open up. Finally, Ella broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot," she started, her eyes looking down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "And I don't know if we can go back to the way things were. I don't think it's possible, but I don't want to lose you, Sarah. I can't stand the idea of us being strangers." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just that she was offering me an olive branch. It was that she was acknowledging the gap between us, the distance that had grown over time, and that it wasn't something that could be erased with one conversation. I sat down next to her, unsure of how to respond. My heart was pounding, but there was a sense of relief, too. At least she wasn't giving up on me completely. "I don't want to lose you either," I said softly. "I know I messed up. I've been so focused on my own problems that I didn't see how much you were carrying. I took you for granted, and I'm sorry. I don't know if I can fix everything, but I want to try." Ella looked at me, her expression softening. "I don't know if fixing things is the right way to put it. Maybe it's more about finding a new way to be around each other, a way that works for both of us. We can't just pretend nothing happened." I nodded slowly, trying to take in what she was saying. "I get it. It's not going to be easy, but we can't just throw everything away either." "No," she agreed quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't." There was a long pause, and then Ella turned toward me, her eyes meeting mine, filled with something I hadn't seen in a while. Hope, maybe, or at least the possibility of it. "I'm not going to throw you out. I've been thinking about it, and maybe we need to rework how we do things. Maybe we need to stop pretending we have all the answers, because clearly we don't." I could feel the tight knot in my chest begin to loosen, just a little. "You mean," Ella interrupted, her voice stronger now, "that maybe we can work together to get through this. We're not perfect, but we're still family. And family has to try." I didn't know if it would be easy, and I didn't know if everything would ever be the same again, but I knew, in that moment, that I wasn't alone anymore. Maybe we didn't have all the answers. Maybe we didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but we were willing to try. That was enough for me. We sat there for a while longer, talking, hashing out the details of what our new dynamic might look like. It wasn't going to be a quick fix. We both knew that. But for the first time in weeks, it felt like there was a path forward. It wasn't clear yet, but it was there. And that was something. The next morning, things weren't magically better. There was still tension in the air, still the residue of all the things left unsaid. But there was also something else, an understanding, an unspoken agreement that we were both willing to make it work. It wouldn't be easy, and there were still things we needed to work through, but we weren't giving up. Not on each other. Not on the possibility of rebuilding what we had. And maybe that was enough for now. Maybe it was a start.